Where does Doctor Doom from Avengers Doomsday really come from? This question has been haunting me for weeks, months, even years. And yet, my last video about the origins of the future greatest antagonist of the MCU came out 6 months ago, because it's probably one of the most difficult questions right now. And yes, Marvel has evolved a lot lately. And you can feel it. Back in 2024 and 2025, it was relatively easy to get information and figure out what Marvel had in store. The arrival of the Russo brothers and AI has changed absolutely everything. Nothing is reliable anymore. And above all, clues are becoming rare. It's an environment that the Russo brothers love. They taunt us, they tease us, often with absolutely nothing in the end. So the fans go crazy, they get impatient. But for me, this question remains. And I have to tell you, it only makes my job more exciting, because this week I'm determined to reopen the investigation with you. Reopen the Victor Von Doom case, his origin, his story, and what makes RDJ the essential actor, according to the Russo brothers, to play this character. This isn't just another theory about how the movie will unfold. No, this week we're going to go over every clue, every lead that could help us answer this simple question. Where does this Doctor Doom come from? That's why, dear friends, we're entering the spoiler zone, the danger zone. You're with Kevin Buckhart, the theorist. Favorite of your favorite theorist. Opening credits. The real Doctor Doom. On the night of July 28, 2024, on the Hall H stage at Comic-Con Marvel, desperate for years and giving a bland presentation, tries its biggest gamble. Amid a multitude of Doom clones, the savior appears, Robert Downey Jr., an earthquake. The star actor, the one who made the franchise successful and whose character sacrificed himself 5 years earlier, returns as the most complex and popular character in the Marvel Universe. That was the day, 2 years ago, when the investigation began. At the time, the Russo brothers, who had just been announced to return to direct the next 2 Avengers movies, made this announcement to us.
We give you the one person who could play Victor Von Doom.
RDJ would therefore be the only person capable of playing Victor Von Doom in their adaptation of Secret Wars. And his casting would be proof of the incredible possibilities of the multiverse. So, pragmatically speaking, indeed, it's quite an incredible possibility. But even today, it's absolutely impossible to really know what the directors wanted to tell us that night. Because there are 2 reasons why these words may have been chosen so carefully. The first would simply be to tell us that yes, the multiverse is incredible and that 2 characters can have the same face without necessarily being the same character. Like Chris Evans, who lends his face to both Captain and Johnny Storm, as Deadpool and Wolverine remind us so well. And that if RDJ is the only person capable of playing this character, it's because, as they say, he would simply be the best actor in the world. Mind you, much to my dismay, this hypothesis is entirely plausible, which would clearly indicate a somewhat desperate choice. But another option is possible, the one we all hope for. If RDJ is indispensable, it's because his face, his identity across the multiverse, must be linked to Tony Stark. And that the connection between these 2 characters is made possible thanks to the complex entanglements of the multiverse. Well, whatever happens, it won't matter much for this video. And yes, you're not learning much here. However, if this moment is so important, it's because it's one of the only official communications about the character. Because 2 years later, all we got was a very mysterious post-credits scene, a visual of the armor, and a botched marketing campaign to tell us more about who this Victor Von Doom really is. So, let's start there. What do we actually know about Doom? The movie Fantastic Four. First Step introduces us for the first time to the existence of Latveria. We see its flag twice when Sue brings together the World Council. Both times the country's seat is empty. But above all, it's a flag that still belongs to the pre-Doom regime. And so, maybe an empty seat because of internal conflict, like a rebellion, for example. That was confirmed by an event organized by Agbo, the Russo brothers' production company, at the South by Southwest Festival in London a few weeks ago. Remember, the Russo brothers teased a special event on their social media. We all thought they were going to reveal the trailer like idiots, let's be honest, when in fact they were just organizing a meetup with influencers in a pop-up cafe called Dom Latveria Coffee. Once the disappointment passed, it's very interesting to analyze what the 2 brothers offered us during this event. I'll say it. At first glance, it's just a cafe. But if they had just wanted to meet their fans, they could have done it anywhere. Here, they arranged to meet with influencers, and their little promo made the rounds on Twitter and Instagram. On the agenda, a card with a representation of the Latvian flag on the back, under the rule of its sovereign Doom. But most importantly, a very interesting menu. It covers Doom's full history in the comics. Fortunov, the ruler in place during the revolution led by Victor, a tyrant who tormented his clan and starved his people. The Approachment, the festival created by Doom on the anniversary of his mother's disappearance. It's a kind of Balkan-style Thanksgiving where Latvians forgive their enemies. The Cynthia's Blend, named after his mother, a gypsy witch whose soul is imprisoned by Mephisto. The Zephyros, the name of the Romani clan Doom and his parents belonged to. And finally, Ascent Stats, the name of Latveria's capital before Doom's rule, now renamed Doomsdat, a bit like Stalingrad. The Russos are telling us here that the origin story of their adaptation will be the same as in the comics. It will be faithful. Doom does have Stark's face, but his past is similar to the one told in the Book of Doom, even though there are many versions of his story over the decades. But that's not all. In this cafe, you can find another element in the setting. On the board behind the counter, only one sentence changes. Reed was wrong. Literally, Reed was wrong. Clues that not only show us that Doom retains his gypsy roots, that he is the ruler of Latveria in the multiverse, but also that he knows Reed Richards. Which brings us to the Fantastic Four and their post-credits scene. 4 years after the events of First Step, we discover for the very first time what appears to be Victor Von Doom. I say what appears to be because quite a few details raise doubts. First, he's not wearing his mask, which is very unusual for him, even unimaginable. Secondly, the design of his mask is very different from the one RDG wore during the reveal, and even more different from the armor he'll wear in Doomsday. And finally, he lets Franklin touch him. If it's not him, then who is it? Well, there's a possibility that it's one of Doom's henchmen. Alex Perez has been saying for several weeks that Doom will be accompanied by some wizards and witches dressed in a cloak and a mask inspired by Doom. Characters like Strange, Clea, Wanda, or even Sylvie, or maybe even Peggy, but that's not the topic of this video, so we'll leave that theory for another time. Let's stick to the idea that it's really Doom, so Franklin isn't scared, but more importantly, Sue doesn't attack him, so there's a good chance that they know each other. And that confirms the idea that this Doom shares the same historical origin as the one from the comics. In the comics, Reed and Victor study at the same prestigious university. They like each other, and depending on the version, they're roommates, but always rivals. Both are geniuses with extraordinary potential, but with completely opposite personalities. Doom is arrogant, almost to a fault, and Reed is rational, probably too much so as well. And it's during this time that Sue, much younger, will also meet Victor. This idea was confirmed by Robert Meyer Burnett on the John Campea show. He says this post-credits scene is actually from Avengers DOOMSDAY and was filmed by the Russo brothers. And it would lead to a scene where Ben and Johnny, while at a baseball game, receive an intrusion alert at the Baxter building. When they arrive, they'll see Reed and Sue being very friendly with the intruder. The couple will introduce the intruder as an old college friend. It's worth noting that Robert and John both claim to have had access to a full draft of the film's script. It's information to take with a grain of salt, of course, but in this case, it does seem pretty legitimate. So yes, with the little information we have, we can say that Victor Von Doom knows the Fantastic Four well, that his origin story should be respected, and that he comes from Universe 828. But then, how does he end up becoming the main threat to the multiverse? Or maybe its savior, Doom, the new Kang? To understand what Doom is doing with the Fantastic Four, we have to look once again at the clues, the CGI and AI, and especially also at the Russo brothers' production company, Agbo. Last October, employees at Agbo recreated a TikTok trend in the lobby of their office. One was wearing an Iron Man mask, the other a Doom mask. But most importantly, in the background, you can see a setup with the costume RDJ wore during the Comic-Con reveal, along with a mannequin dressed as Sue Storm and a little boy representing Franklin. A setup that clearly recalls the leaked Secret Wars concept art. The one where we see the Court of God Emperor Doom accompanied by his companion, who appears to be Sue, and once again, what seems to be little Franklin. Clues that lead us to numerous insider reports, including one from My Time to Shine Hello. A few months ago, she told us about Doom's tragic origins. He would be married to Sue and would be Franklin's father in another universe. But a tragic event would have caused their deaths, as well as nearly fatal injuries to Doom. This would have set off his quest for vengeance. Well, I know what you're saying. This has nothing to do with anything we've talked about. How can he know the Fantastic Four from Universe 828 and at the same time have another family with Sue? Well, that's exactly what we're going to try to find out. This week, Alex Perez released a new Q&A. He is still, to this day, the most credible insider, with, according to Reddit, a reliability score of over 90%, the highest in the game. He confirmed that Doomsday will introduce 5 different universes to us. The Avengers universe, 616, the X-Men's universe, 1005, the Fantastic Four's universe, 828, but also, in his words, Doctor Doom's original universe and an alternate universe. However, in the same Q&A, he states that Doom does come from 828 and that he shares a history with Reed. Well, here we have a repeating pattern, the same inconsistency, so there's only one option. If he's originally from 828 and has a family elsewhere, it means that at some point he left that 828, and that's exactly what Doomsday will be about soon. Victor would be a multiversal traveler, and Doomsday, like Infinity War, isn't a movie about the Avengers, but about the main villain of the story, here Doom himself. Just like Thanos, he sees himself as the savior of the multiversal crisis, and he's probably the one who knows the multiverse best. That's probably why he wasn't there in First Step. His genius could have helped Reed solve the Galactus crisis, but Doom just wasn't there. But then, where was he? To find out, you have to understand the background of this big turnaround at Marvel. The idea for Avengers Doomsday came together a bit hastily. Let me remind you, the initial plan to lead us to Secret Wars was Kang Dynasty. With Matt Majors being removed, everything had to be reconsidered, but not necessarily thrown away. Since then, with interviews from screenwriter Michael Waldron and some leaks, we know the main outlines of this abandoned project. The Kang from Quantumania, finally freed, was supposed to enter into a war against the Council of Kangs. In addition to an open war, it was also a deeply personal war, a personal vendetta, because during his exile, the Council would have assassinated his wife, Ravonna, while she was still carrying his child. In this movie, the Council would have been everywhere, attacking on all fronts, and the teams of the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four would have had to split up to face this multitude of threats. For his part, the Conqueror would have gone in search of artifacts to defeat his enemies, notably Kamala's quantum bracelets and Shang-Chi's 10 rings, which together are capable of reshaping reality. In this battle, the universe would have collapsed rapidly. Loki and the TVA would have been involved by forming a team of anchor beings, with Toby's Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Deadpool. And the movie would have led, with the victory of Kang the Conqueror, to the end of the multiverse and the creation of Battleworld. The idea of a shocking intro with the X-Men was also considered. And so yes, normally if you follow the channel, you understand that there are a lot of similarities between this scenario and the reports we've heard about Doomsday, quite simply because they had to move quickly. And Michael Waldron, who wrote the script for Kang Dynasty, worked with Steve McFeely on the one for Doomsday, so they adapted quite a few things. And one element of this script is really interesting to me. The one about family. Kang was going to see his family destroyed, which would set him on a quest for multiversal revenge, creating the battle world to maybe find them again. And once again, this matches what My Time Mike T reported about Doom's family. But then, where would Doom have found this family? Well, remember the list of 5 universes made by Alex Perez. Not having had the luxury of building universes we could get attached to throughout the whole multiverse saga, the Russos made do with what they had. So, 616 is obviously the main universe, 828 was set up just for a second film, but that's where the Fantastic Four come from, very important, and so does Doom. For the rest, they had to piece together a shaky X-Men universe with Deadpool and the old X-Men. But then, what are the other universes? Clearly, Alex Perez didn't want to say too much so as not to spoil the surprise. But, without a doubt, the so-called parallel universe and the battle world would appear in the third part of the movie. We still have this universe where Doom might come from, the only one we've truly explored in the entire multiverse saga. Universe 838. A stolen life. A few weeks ago, we went back over the information that Steve Rogers had reportedly been moved to the universe of the Fantastic Four, 828. In this video, based on numerous reports, I developed the idea that Steve could never have just stayed there doing nothing, letting the world fall into war and knowing that the Avengers probably wouldn't exist. He would therefore be the reason why this world is a utopia, acting from the shadows in a world that has never known a major war, a world where technology and peace have thrived, leading to the rise of the Fantastic Four. But all of this comes at a price, because with his actions, Steve will create an artificial world, a world far from its destiny. And for me, that's where everything is at stake. In the comics, Doom has always been secretly jealous of Reed. The two share the same genius, but Victor has constantly had to fight and make huge sacrifices, whereas he feels that everything was given to Reed. And still, according to Alex Perez, in Doomsday, we'll see that the two geniuses have a different understanding of the multiverse. While Reed has a theoretical knowledge, Doom would have practical experience. So I think that Doom discovered the artificial nature of his universe, and that he tried to find a new life elsewhere. After all, he wouldn't be the first. Steve changed universes to protect his family, apparently with Loki's help, and Wanda traveled the multiverse using dreamwalking to find herself a family. And we know that this kind of action never comes without a price. It creates incursions. The MCU has already scattered them everywhere. Steve from 616 to 828. Strange's spell in No Way Home, which weakens 616 against Toby's and Andrew's universes. Darwin, who literally causes one between 616 and 1005, the X-Men universe. In short, as soon as we mess with the multiverse, we damage it. But what really interests us here are Wanda's dreamwalking and the mess caused by Strange in Multiverse of Madness. Because these two universes hit a very specific universe, 838, the events that led to the death of this world's Illuminati and the destruction of the Darkhold throughout the multiverse. And it's precisely this universe that we need to take a closer look at now. Because once again, we're dealing with a reality that seems utopian. Here, it's the Illuminati who protect this world. Made up of the leader of the X-Men, the leader of the Fantastic Four, the Sorcerer Supreme, Black Bolt of the Inhumans, Captain Carter, and Captain Marvel. But that's not all. Since everyone saw that one chair was left empty, once again, and when you take a closer look at this world, you notice a few little things. First, the Hulk protocol. Ultron seems to have worked here. Obedient robots are patrolling. However, there's no sign of an Iron Man. Possibly these are early versions of Doombots. Also, here, it seems that Captain Carter is the one representing the Avengers, if they exist, not Tony Stark. Next, Reed Richards' portal. Exactly the same as the one used by the Kangs. But in the comics, this technology actually belongs to Doom. And it's possible that the Kangs, who come from the 31st century, simply reused it. However, we saw that Doom, in the post-credits scene of the Fantastic Four, seems to appear out of nowhere. So he also has technology like this. Speaking of technology, the handcuffs used on Strange in this world combine technology and magic, all surrounded by green energy. Interesting. And finally, there's the knowledge of the multiverse. Reed and Christine in Universe 838 seem to have an amazing mastery of it. However, at no point is there any mention of an ability to travel through the multiverse. So how do they know all this? Well, I think this knowledge was brought by the missing member of the team. The one in the empty chair, a multiversal traveler. Doom. Well, it's true, put that way. Everything still sounds very theoretical, I admit. So let's bring in something a bit more concrete. One of the abandoned pieces of concept art for Multiverse of Madness was supposed to show us an epic magic battle between Doctor Strange and, yes, Doctor Doom. This movie was supposed to introduce Doom to us, my friends. Proof, once again, that 838 is probably his adopted universe. And I think his absence from the movie is anything but a coincidence. This council decided to kill this world Strange, the one who dared to corrupt himself with the Darkhold to defeat Thanos. Exactly the kind of extreme decision that Doom totally understands. So there's a good chance he distanced himself from this execution and retreated to his castle in Latveria. Well, from there, a question arises. How could Doom have taken Reed's life when a Reed already exists in this universe? I have children of my own. I understand your pain. Because yes, if Franklin is his son, he can't be his biological father. So, a Reed must exist somewhere. Well, simply by removing him from the equation, thanks to a certain Wanda. By exterminating the Illuminati, the Scarlet Witch unknowingly gave Doom access to the power of this world and Reed's place. That's probably when Doom understood the value of allies like Strange or Wanda, the ones we'll probably find at his side in Doomsday. And now he's finally here. Doom has a family, a wife, a son to comfort after the loss of their Reed. A life that was never his, but one he believes he deserves more than anyone else. For the first time, Victor Von Doom is happy. For the first time, he has everything Reed had, and everything life had always denied him. The problem is, nothing can be stolen without consequences. And this happiness, Doom is about to pay a heavy price for it. Doom's vengeance. Because as we've said, changing universes, stealing a place that isn't yours, it never comes without consequences. 828 was his cradle. 838 became his refuge. But a stolen refuge remains a fragile refuge. And now, this world is unstable. Incursions are coming. And according to My Time to Shine, Doom would blame only one man for it. The one who started it all, Steve Rogers. This is where we need to put the pieces back together, because everything suggests that Universe 838 will be destroyed at the time of Doomsday. The official promotion for the movie tells us there are only 3 universes left: 616, 10,105, and 828. 3 worlds fighting for their survival against Doom. And if you think about it, Victor is specifically after these 3. First, 828, his world of origin. The one ruined by a single man, Steve Rogers. Next, 616, the one that accelerated the incursions everywhere. the world at the center of all this mess. And finally, the X-Men's world, 10,005, a world plagued by many incursions that's trying to survive and probably destroyed 838, which was left defenseless after Wanda's carnage. An incursion that will shatter his dream and leave him wounded. So, he does what he has always done. He rebuilds himself. He becomes stronger to get revenge and to find his lost family. This is where his great journey begins. Doom travels the multiverse seeking artifacts to increase his power. As Alex Perez noted, he gains strength from various relics collected throughout the multiverse, which are visible on his armor. The symbol of Thor's hammer, the star of Captain Marvel, on his medallions, and we can imagine the presence of Anno around his arms. According to Alex Perez, he would wield both technology and rune magic, and possess the knowledge of many mystical books, including the Darkhold. We might even discover an entire room filled with trophies, the remains of heroes defeated across the multiverse, a bit like Red Skull in Old Man Logan or Maestro. His mission, then, is to collect the powers of the most powerful beings from the remaining universes to create a new world. A perfect world in his own image, a world where he will have saved the multiverse and where no one will ever be able to threaten his utopia again. He sees himself as the hero facing chaos, and this is precisely where the adaptation diverges from the comics. Because in the comics, we learn that the Beyonders created the multiverse as a simple experiment, and that Doom discovers they are about to end it. For that, each universe has its own Molecule Man, a being so powerful that he serves as a bomb, created by the Beyonders and designed to destroy the multiverse in one blow. So, Doom travels through time and kills as many Molecule Men as he can, one by one. Except the Beyonders had a plan B. If the multiverse can't explode all at once, then the incursions are triggered. A slow cascade, but one that leads to exactly the same end. And in the MCU, there are no Beyonders, no Molecule Man, but exactly the same logic. Because he who remains is actually the equivalent of those Beyonders. He's the one who has control over the multiverse and all the timelines. The Loom represents this constant grand reset. And when Loki destroys it, he frees the multiverse. But he also triggers, just like Doom in the comics, the beginning of the incursions. That's why Loki has to take the powers of the God of Stories to maintain the balance for as long as he can. And that's where everything is at stake. Because that power, that control over the multiverse, Doom needs it to build his world. So he's gonna go back to where it all began, in 828, with his old friend Reed. According to the insiders, that's where he'll get help building a device. A device capable of detecting an anomaly coming from another universe and tracking down the intruder. The rest belongs to the movie, but what we already know is that there's definitely a good amount of time between the post-credits scene of the Fantastic Four and Doomsday. First, because of the evolution of Doom's armor, but also because an 11-year-old boy was cast to play Franklin. And when you remember what he was capable of as a baby, you realize that a preteen could very well become a key piece to help Doom create his battle world. Anyway, guys, tell me what you think of this huge theory. Do you find it plausible? For you, which universe does he come from? For me, it's all there. If you're new here, don't hesitate to subscribe, guys. I post videos like this every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Check out my latest video on Spider-Man's real villain. Meanwhile, remember to stay curious. It's the key to happiness. Bye.